one story, the entity, the temporal sector. I was always fascinated by time. Growing up in a small town in Oregon, I would often lose myself in books about theoretical physics and the mysteries of the universe. I never expected that this obsession would lead me to an encounter that would haunt me forever. It all began one quiet evening while I was working at the local observatory. The job was uneventful, mostly data analysis and occasional stargazing, but that night, something strange happened. At exactly 11:57 p.m., the equipment went haywire, flashing numbers that made no sense. I tried to reset the system, but nothing worked. Then, I saw it. A flash of light outside the observatory, followed by a strange hum. I stepped out cautiously, heart pounding, and that's when I noticed a distortion in the air. It was like a ripple, as if the fabric of time itself was bending. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the distortion. It was tall and skeletal, its form shifting and flickering as if it wasn't fully anchored in our reality. The creature's face was a blur, but its eyes were unmistakable, glowing with an eerie, timeless energy. I froze in terror. The creature slowly turned its head toward me, and time seemed to stretch and warp around it. My watch stopped, the ticking of the second hand suspended in midair. It was as if I was caught in a temporal limbo, unable to move, unable to breathe. The creature stepped forward, its body pulsing with the rhythm of time itself. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the distortion around me. In that moment, I realized what it was. It wasn't from this timeline. It was an entity that existed beyond the confines of linear time, a being that slipped through temporal cracks and fed on those who became too curious. I was its next target. Suddenly, the creature lunged at me, and time collapsed. I felt myself being pulled into the distortion, my body stretched across infinite moments, my mind unraveling as I glimpsed countless timelines in an instant. It was overwhelming, the past, present, and future all colliding in a chaotic storm of events. But then I remembered something I had read about temporal anomalies. The only way to escape was to reject the reality they presented. With every ounce of willpower, I forced myself to focus on the present moment, on the observatory around me, on the ground beneath my feet. And then it happened. The distortion flickered and vanished, taking the creature with it. Time resumed its normal flow, and I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. I never spoke of the encounter again. No one would believe me, anyway. But sometimes, late at night, when the clock strikes 11:57, I can still feel the ripple of time bending around me, and I know that the creature is still out there, somewhere lurking in the folds of reality, waiting. Two-story, the temporal terror. I always thought time was an unchangeable line, a sequence of moments that once passed were lost forever. But that night, in the small town of Riverton, I learned otherwise. It started as an ordinary evening. I was finishing up my shift at the old Riverton Library. The building was practically deserted, save for the usual stack of overdue books. As I checked them in, a strange feeling crept over me. It was as if the air itself was thickening. When I went to retrieve a book from the restricted section, I noticed something odd about one of the old volumes. It was bound in a strange material, with no title on the spine. My curiosity got the better of me, so I carefully opened it. The pages were filled with strange symbols and diagrams. As I examined them, I felt an odd pressure in my head. It was as if the book was pulling me into its contents. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. In the darkness, I heard a faint sound of shuffling footsteps. I turned on my flashlight and saw nothing but shadows dancing on the walls. But the sound continued, growing louder and closer. Then I saw it. A shape in the darkness, shifting and warping as if it were made of liquid shadow. Its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and it seemed to flicker in and out of existence. I tried to run, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The creature moved with unnatural speed, closing the distance between us. Its presence felt like a cold wave crashing over me. In a desperate attempt to escape, I grabbed the strange book and hurled it at the creature. The book seemed to pulse with energy as it flew through the air. When it struck the creature, there was a blinding flash of light. When I could see again, the creature was gone. The library was back to normal, and the lights were working again. I picked up the book and found that the pages were now blank. It was then that I realized the truth. The creature was not from this world. It had come from a place where time was fluid and ever-changing. And the book was the key to its existence. I had narrowly escaped, but I knew that the creature was still out there, lurking in the shadows of time. And if I were not careful, it might find its way back to me. 3-story, The Temporal Haunting. I was just another night shift at the small-town police department in Ashford, a quiet American village known for its calm demeanor and tight-knit community. The old clock on the wall ticked away the seconds as I filed paperwork for a minor disturbance call earlier in the evening. A sudden, clattering noise from the evidence room jolted me from my focus. It was odd for anyone to be in there at this hour. I grabbed my flashlight and walked cautiously toward the room, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. As I approached, the clattering stopped. The room was dark, and a strange chill seemed to permeate the air. I pushed open the door and scanned the room with my flashlight. Nothing seemed out of place, but a shiver ran down my spine. I was about to turn away when something caught my eye on the wall. A strange symbol was etched into the wood, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a spiral with jagged lines extending outward. Curiosity got the better of me, and I reached out to touch the symbol. As my fingers brushed against it, a blinding flash of light enveloped the room. When it faded, I found myself in a completely different place. I was no longer in the evidence room. Instead, I stood in what appeared to be an old, decrepit version of the police department, but with a dark, unnatural atmosphere. The walls were covered in strange markings, and a cold wind howled through the hallways. I walked cautiously through the building, my flashlight flickering erratically. The air felt dense with something I couldn't quite place. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around to find nothing but darkness. Then I saw it. A shadowy figure lurked in the corners of my vision. It moved with an unnatural grace, and every time I tried to focus on it, it seemed to vanish. I felt a cold presence drawing closer, its intentions clearly hostile. In a moment of panic, I ran down the corridor, the creature's eerie whispers echoing around me. I stumbled into a room and slammed the door shut. The whispers grew louder, filling the space with a maddening cacophony. I looked around and noticed another symbol on the floor, identical to the one from before. Realizing that it might be the key to escaping, I knelt and touched the symbol. Instantly, the room blurred around me once more. I was back in the evidence room, the symbol fading from the wall. The creature was gone, but the experience had left its mark on me. I couldn't explain what had happened, but the temporal sector seemed to hold secrets best left undiscovered.